Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's BAInsights. I'm really pleased to have two excellent guests join me today. And we're talking about a topic a little bit close to my heart, which is BPMN process models. And with us today, we've got two guests, and I'm going to start with Sheldon to introduce himself.
Hello. Thank you, John. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Good day, Jared. Good day, everyone at home sitting and watching this exciting show. I hope you're going to have a good time because I'm pretty certain you will. My name is Sheldon Bundus. I am an IT business consultant specializing in modernization programs, utilizing awesome tools in the business analysis field and business system analysis, such as BPMN is one of them, which we're talking about today, but there's many other beautiful ones out there like use cases and et cetera, et cetera. My focus is on business process reengineering and how I can use BPMN to achieve that. Over to you, Jared. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon. Jared?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So we also a business process consultant, so independent consultant, where I work a lot with BPMN and also to the automation part of the BPMN using what we call business process engine to automate or orchestrate those business processes.
Excellent. So you've confirmed what I suspected and knew already, that you're both exactly the right guests to join us and talk about this topic. Anyway. So good. So let's so maybe we'll dive into the first question. I should tell everybody who's watching at this point as well, if you've got any questions or comments, obviously you can't interact live, but feel free to share them. To get your opinion, your experience, and of course, if you're watching this without having subscribed, please do, and do the usual likes as well that we like to see on YouTube. Sheldon, the question over, mate. What is BPMN and why is it applicable to business analysts?
BPMN, business process modeling notation. It's a way to visually depict your organization's processes, the events, the business objects, the rules, the sequencing, the activities, the folks that are involved. So basically, in my world, it's about 5 W's, but when we talk about BPMN, it's about the 4 W's for me mainly. Who, what, when, where, but the why not so much, because we're talking about reflecting reality. Yeah. So BPMN is a way that you can take people together, technical and non-technical folks, and round them up to a succinct understanding with a one-pager, which I would call a bird's eye view. We could get into that a little bit later, but without carrying on too much, it's a tool and also a technique to facilitate requirements and understand the reflection of the reality of the environment you're in.
Thank you, Sheldon. Jared?
Yeah, for sure. Like Sheldon just mentioned, I think it's a perfect tool to put or to align everyone around the table and to talk about, the processes, the idea, what we want to accomplish regarding a specific, let's say, process. So it's also kind of one of the first time I come across BPMN. I found it really magnificent because you are able to show visually something. On my side, for example, where I use a lot of BPMN for automation, so we can go from the business where we show the processes, so the BPMN processes, the way it's visual, it's understandable, and then we can refine progressively these processes to automate them. So that's kind of, I think Sheldon kind of wrap it up.
I would agree. And the point you made there, Jared, on top of the fine point that Sheldon made as well, about it being understandable, is really valid. I think from my prior experience, but before I looked at BPMN, you tended to put a lot of detail around the process flow to explain what it was you was looking at, why there was a certain decision, what the triggers might have been, why a particular process or activity was manual or automated or otherwise. So I think BPMN has just allowed that extra level of granularity and understanding, as you put it. So I think you both made an excellent point. I think or points rather. And just really for anyone that's not familiar, I think really BPMN, we'll talk about what it offers in comparison to regular or old school process modeling. is really just that predefined set of objects where you can get into that detail and that level of understanding that Gérard really mentions. So, Gérard, what does BPMN enable or provide that standard or other forms of process modeling do not?
Yes. So the first thing for me, it's really like we already mentioned, the visual representation. So the possibility to align everyone around around the process, and also it's more enriched than maybe other modeling tool or modeling notation. So and on top of that, what I really think from my IT, let's say, background and regarding the automation, it's something like we can go from like the descriptive model until the automation or the execution of that BPMN processes. So I mean, I think that's kind of, so we can go from, from non-technical people and until the automation of that business processes, at least regarding on my side where I work a lot around automating business BPMN processes.
Yeah, it's an important point, isn't it? Because it's not just for us to define the process so that people in the business know what their own process is. Quite most of the time they have some familiarity with it, as you can imagine. But it's so that everyone is on the same page, and probably more importantly, as importantly, within technology, you need to be able to provide the technology teams that build a solution with that view of either what is happening in the business or what needs to happen in the future process. So BPMN models, you say, are a really good way of succinctly providing that overview to stakeholders.
Completely. And also maybe if I can add something also, since the version 2.0 of the BPMN, they also a standardization regarding the automation or the execution of processes. So because before that, so the BPMN version 1 was mainly purely about the visual representation of the processes. But then with the 2.0 version now, there's also the standardization about how to execute those processes. So that also brings kind of interoperability between different tools, because if a tool BPMN execution conformance, so respect the BPMN execution conformance, you can use you can move from one tool to the other, because if it respects the standard, you can move from one tool to the other.
Yeah, I would agree. Sheldon, your point on that question?
Yeah, great points, Jared. And I mean, you covered a lot of it here. It's going to be hard to follow that one, but I'll take a swing on my own style here. I'm going to say maybe some things in the same way, a little differently. To start with, I see BPMN as bringing order from chaos. When I look at UML, old school, like other type processing modeling notations, the old school UML is like everybody has their own flavor of it. And what I really get wild with is that one pager that stuff goes around like this and like that and all over. I just have to giggle when I see stuff like that nowadays, because since I became a BPMN advocate as of 2018, I have to say that it totally transformed the way that I view process modeling. And the reason why, when I say bring order to chaos, is like BPMN, first off, is left to right. You can formulate it top to down if you want, but depending on the pools, I mean, sometimes you want to start it on the bottom just for the diagramming aspect of it, to make it more clear. Some of the communication, messaging flows, and sequencing, if you just by changing the pools, the vertices, which layer they're on, you can actually really simplify the modeling itself. So I love the creative aspect of using BPM, and from that perspective, because compared to other modeling notations, because it forces you to think through your thought process of an analysis. So you start asking questions that when you see a diagram that goes like this all over the place, your brain power is kind of focused on just trying to understand what the flow is and how things are moving. And even a old school flow chart with decision matrix or whatever, that still isn't sufficient enough to really define what's going on and start asking those deep questions like, well, when I run this activity, do I have to wait for somebody else to complete something before I can start this activity? Does this input that's generated from this that I'm supposed to generate from this output of this process here? Am I supposed to take this input, and how long do I have to process it? In the meantime, are there any other inputs that could interrupt it? Are there any interactions that, you're not going to think about this stuff when you're just trying to follow old school UML. So I love that it's got that detailed semantics to it, where you can, literally call out from an activity perspective, just looking at, immediately if it's a user task, if it's a web service, if it's just a message, you're sending an email, it could be a sub process. You could call right out. So, modeling complex processes on one page, BPMN is magnifico, because you can, I look at it from the aspect of, bird's eye view, which I touched on earlier. I'm going to dig in deeper on each one of these questions based on this. But when I look at based on the question, but when I look at BPMN, typically bird's eye view, I look at business I want to understand how the business operates, and I look at capabilities as a top layer. And in my world, when I do the bird's eye view, those sub processes represent capabilities. So we can call that. And so when you want to really understand an end-to-end flow, BPMN gives you the multi-layer capability that I do not see with UML. And I've tried other tools like draw.io. That's a tool. We're not there yet. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, BPMN and generally, I love it. I love it.
I would agree. I mean, it sort of allows us to take certain, I guess, concepts to a different levels. I mean, I recall in the past, you've got a basic process flow. You would tend to represent the client perhaps in a theoretical flow alongside maybe other teams that were also involved. And actually, the way that the pooling works with BPMN now means that you can be very distinct about different entities, and the fact that the organisation that are doing the internal activities are quite a different organisation from the client, as an example. So there's I guess there's just some of that neatness and uniformity and just organisation.
Order to chaos.
Yeah, it's perfect word for it. So yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And down to the events as well. I mean, like just all those different types of events to show, as you said, it's a message, it's a time-driven event, etc. They just allow you that order on the flow.
Yeah. That's right. And, I just to add on to what Jared mentioned earlier was, the interoperability of it too, because you could use BPMN as an input to a case tool. So you can develop software code like just based on a well-defined BPMN diagram. And it doesn't have to be super crazy. You can get super technical with it, or you cannot, and you can still express what you need to express, which is awesome. The scoping capability of it, right? You could really, if you have a creative mind, and we all do, that's why we're in this field. I mean, personally, John, how do you feel about BPMN?
I mean, I think it's just taken the process flows to another level, to be honest. I mean, I used to, I like basic process flows as well, to be honest, but there's always these additional pieces of information that you end up annotating around the flow. And of course, that lack of structure, uniformity, it allows me to have a quite different way of modeling than maybe the three other people in my theoretical team. Whereas when we've got BPMN, all of the types of situations we want to model, we have a tool and we have a notation to model it. So we don't have to be different, which means, to Gerard's point, that if it's technology that's interpreting our process flow, it's able to do it. But also, people, stakeholders, your team, all the stakeholders you engage with, they get used to this new level of granularity that you can provide. And most of it's quite intuitive. I mean, I think most people historically could probably look at a process if it's based on a topic they're familiar with and sort of get the gist of what it's showing. And now it's interesting. It's just another level of like objects, and they can start to say, well, okay, I can see my process started from a message. It's starting from a trigger. It's starting from something else. Or yes, I appreciate that activity is happening, but now I can truly reflect that it's a user of a system, or it's totally manual. And just that alone, just if I pick on those two examples, the ability to see which processes are manual versus systemic, that immediately gives you things to focus on when you want to improve the transparency or the efficiency of the process.
Exactly. Hotspots. Hotspots.
Exactly. Yeah. And I could go on all day, of course, but
maybe
I'm sure we'll sort of explore other
same here.
Themes, yeah.
Yeah. Also, one thing that I like to usually say about that is also that give you the possibility to have your end-to-end process. So you have the visibility about your end-to-end process. And like you mentioned, you can then deep inside each step to explore more, to know more about maybe sub-processes and to improve them. Yeah.
That's it.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I find really since BPMN has come along, organizations who have like enterprise-wide processes and process standards, they feel like they've got a more controllable model and a model that fits them, so that they can go layer by layer through their organization and portray reality, but at a level that's appropriate. Because if you want to just show the highest level of your organization, you don't necessarily have to be showing swim lanes to show that there's some things happening. Whereas at the very low level, you do want to show it. You want to show teams and roles, etc.
The who part, the details.
Exactly.
You know what? I love what you said. Global. So it's global standard. So I work with global teams, and this is a tool that we can use to communicate very quickly and efficiently. Complex, no matter what level it's at. And the other thing I love about it as a BA is you can use BPN in your interview sessions to ask someone about their world. And within like 1 hour of dealing with a SME, like I'm talking about someone who's worked at the company for, say a senior manager that's been there for 20 years. That's why they're the senior manager. So they know this place inside out, end to end, like you say, Jared. It's literally like that. Sitting with them for 1 hour, and you can ask them like, give me your, what do you guys do? What if as a business unit, as a division, what are your top capabilities? List 5 of them. Okay. Top 5. Right. And then they think, oh, yeah, okay. And then you just start from there, and holy smokes, 1 hour of collecting and if you're a fast typer, you could take notes or you record it or whatever your style is. I like to type myself because it forces me to, read it later and at the same time listening. And I like to keep myself busy while I'm going. Plus, I don't remember. I may not comprehend what they're saying to me at the time. So as I type it, I can, at least I have a verbose record of what I did. And it's the fact that I'm typing it is repetition sticks, and so BPMN modeling, I can hammer, I have hammered out a lot of details in a very short period of time, just by being with that lean team that knows, yeah.
And your stakeholders can see that detail sometimes if you're modeling it live. They can see it evolving. And I'm sure it's probably not lost on them the level of detail that you go into in a BPMN session. Then, like if you're taking yourself back to pre-BPMN, where you're definitely operating at a much higher level, I would say.
Yeah, and you're missing a lot of dimension to it, right? So it's almost like 2D versus 3D. It's like that much of a hop in terms of capability to communicate.
Yeah, it's really really effective point there, Sheldon. That's talking about 3D versus 2D. I think that's spot on. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And where we're going in the future is going to get more exciting. Like literally metaverse 3D stuff. Like wow. Like and time, dimensions, weight. None of that stuff's going to matter anymore. Like we'll be able to communicate stuff like we've never thought of.
I may have a question on that later. We shall see.
Sure.
Time allows. But we talked a little bit about. I know we won't do it justice here talking about BPMN. It's so deep and there's so much to it. But we've spoken about what it is conceptually. I think hopefully the viewers of this, listeners to this, can appreciate that it's worth looking into. But for those individuals that want to explore BPMN, are there any mapping tools that you've used to create BPMN processes, Sheldon?
Oh yeah. This is my turn, is it? Or
yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm looking at this and I've worked with several tools just based on corporate standard. You got to use these tools or whatever. But let me start with the worst and work my way up to the best. So the worst tool I've worked with is probably draw.io, Google. Now that's probably going to make some people cry because they love it. For me, it's just not the thing. I spend too much time finicking trying to make connectors work and connect where I want, lining up the little, like it just it's mind boggling. I don't have time for that. But when I'm talking about your next layer up, I've worked with Lucid Spark, and that's a pretty solid tool. I liked it. I haven't worked with it to the layer of expertise that I developed with Visio, though. And Visio is, for me, the subscription Visio 2 plan. That's just the Rockstar Park stuff. That's just smack it out of the park with that thing real quick. Because it's right click on your mouse. You're selecting your activity types, your event types. You're going to your layers, intermediate, start, intermediate, end events. You'll be able to tag, send, receive messaging. Like you can save, instead of having too many dots, you can cut some corners here and there using your timers, features and whatnot. Like all the different types that you can, at a click of a button. And I mean, it just depicts it. So, hey, is this a web service, or is this a manual process in the system? Am I swivel chairing this to, oh, what, so it's all there and at the fingertip. So Visio to me is my number one tool. And if I see Draw IO, I just kind of like cringe a little bit. So it's maybe because I haven't spent enough time with it, which is typically the case. But from a tooling perspective, I also prefer Visio because it also does things like I love use case diagramming, and I use that for Visio too for that as well. And I mean, Lucid Spark is a quick runner up. That's about all I got. There's other tools out there.
Versatility as well, isn't it, with Visio that you often want to try and find in a tool. It's like almost trying to find a balance of the uniformity that you need for BPMN models, which Visio allows because it's got the template, but then also sometimes that ability to embed your BPMN diagram around something else, that's got more detail about the situation, the project, stakeholders, whatever it might be, and there are other tools, but Visio it can do so many things. That's why it's probably always a tool of choice for many. I wonder, Gérard, what would be your tools of choice?
Yeah, my tool of choice. It's since I mentioned from the beginning, I'm coming from really the automation part of the BPMN. So I use a tool called, I don't know if you already heard about that. It's the business process execution engine called Camunda. And so in that ecosystem, they use it's a tool to model business processes. That it's called it's Camunda Modular essentially. So that's the main tool I've used, to really design business processes, BPMN processes. For the other part, for the other tool, not really. It was mainly not really professionally. It was like, just like quick thing. But for professionally, it's mainly about Camunda Modeler. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not a tool I've heard of before, but I'll definitely look into it afterwards, and I'll ensure in my write-up I call that one out so that we can see what that tool is. I think on top of what you both said, I mean, definitely I'm a user of Visio for sure. But I've also used other tools like Aris, there's Blueworks, there's Sparks Enterprise Architect. I've used that before for different purposes. Yep. And I'm sure there's a few tools I've probably used and neglected to add as well. Definitely other tools on the shelf for sure. But I think there's probably a couple of favourites in there. I think, but Visio is very flexible. However, I suppose if you're an organisation, you're trying to introduce standards that are consistent across the organisation, you want to get better reporting off of it, you probably need something a little bit more robust, and that's where your Blueworks, your Aris, and your Enterprise Architect can fill that need, I would say. That can as well sometimes introduce additional challenges for me, in terms of, if we use a particularly heavy a big tool such as I guess Enterprise Architect, sometimes you can get bogged down with some of the technical abilities that it provides. So, for example, if it's got a BPMN model within it, it will quite often have every shape and object that you're able to use out of the BPMN toolkit, and I think certainly for organisations I've worked with and projects I've worked on, you generally don't need every single symbol. It's having a limited amount, and just and so it's always best to agree up front with the team, irrespective of who you're using. What are we going to use for our events? What are applicable? What type of processes are applicable? And what are we not going to use? So I mean, certainly that is an obvious challenge to me. I think as well, I mean, the simplicity sometimes that we want to try and achieve as a BA, so that our stakeholders and technology and vendors and whoever we're working with, we need that simplicity so they can understand what we've produced and what we've identified or what we've witnessed, without having us to guide them through it every step of the way.
Right.
Always a consideration.
Defeats the purpose then, You want to have reusable documentation anybody can understand, right? I mean, we're not writing code here,
That's it.
So there's a high level of syntax is there, but you don't need to use all the all the keywords, right? You can get away with redefine what it means for your organization. Like look at the people that you're working with at the time. Look how advanced that organization is with that tool. Look at any samples if they currently have them. Try to emulate that style, right?
Yeah.
But always try to inject improvements in everything, because no matter where you go, there's always room for improvement. And I'm sure, everybody has background experience to draw from, and they can interject that into their next thing, right? So,
That's it.
you
And you
know,
see there, I started talking about the topics, I suppose, of challenges. We were talking about tools. We covered a few of them. Sure, there might be others. But also some of the tooling in my example can present a challenge. But I wonder, Jared, are there any other particular challenges that you found when implementing or using or introducing BPMN where you've been?
Yes. From a personal experience, what I just realized is it's like, to get the foundation about BPMN, it's really easy, to get the foundation because it's visual. So you can kind of just follow the sequence flow and you kind of understand what's going on. But when you go deeper in the semantics, it's kind of also kind of a learning curve. And usually, so the people I'm working with, so business people and technical people also, they have their own stuff going on. So they don't really have time to, maybe to have time to learn more, or, to go deeply about learning the semantics of the BPMN. So I think that's kind of challenges, because when it goes a little bit beyond, the foundational part of BPMN, it kind of become complex for them to really get it. So you kind of have to explain them, okay, what it means, and then yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and that's where the skill of the BA comes in, doesn't it? To help them,
Totally.
help the stakeholders know the level they need to understand without having
Exactly.
to bog themselves down in modeling detail. They should be able to skim through the process, recognize it's accurate, or be able to comment upon it, but not be like go crazy from the different types of objects that they see before them. Sheldon, what would be your view as well on challenges you might have faced?
well, like getting to Jared's point, like getting on that hop of getting the learning curve taken care of with the user base or the consumers. If you're working with a large scale modernization program and you've got people who have never even seen BPMN before, like, I mean, it could be very intimidating for them to look at a diagram, and then you're asking them to validate the process. They're not willing to sign off so much because they don't even know what they're looking at, right? So getting back to being a BA, it's all about educating folks, teaching them, being a mentor, and starting off with that blank one pager. Everything's a one pager to me. You start off with that one pager diagram, and then you dig down. And what does that one page diagram start for me? It starts with all the elements that I use to and what they mean. So what is a pool? So the basics, the building blocks. Who are the actors or the pools? Looking at what are the activities, different activity types, events. What are events? What do they mean? What type of events can we have? How do you know where a process starts? How do you know where it ends? Really basically the basics. Cover that with them on the one pager, and then start with processing model and keeping it simple. So the issue I'm trying to mitigate here is overcomplication. And that's one thing that the tool BPMN can definitely do, which is something that people can just get run away with. They spend days modeling something because they're overcomplicating it. So the concept is always fit for purpose. You diagram it for your audience for fit for purpose to understand what you need to understand. If you're trying to automate something, well, then I guess you'll be diagramming out the manual processes, trying to determine where the data inputs, outputs are, what are the activities involved, where can you automate, where do you have the opportunities to automate. So hotspot, which you were talking about earlier, John, you're alluding to, you can see where it gets messy, right? So that's the other thing too, is when it gets messy, sub-process, well, I think this, when it comes down to figuring things out and how to get around problems with the visual, it's just simplification and just boil it up, and it starts with education up front. So it's change management all over again, where, how are you going to set yourself up for success? You first have to build awareness, give them the knowledge so that they understand why these things are important, why this model is powerful, and what the goals are that you're going to be able to achieve it, and the reusability factor for training, onboarding new employees, stuff like that. Am I running off on a tangent here, guys?
Well, not at all. Not at all. We were talking about challenges, and then actually we're moving into practical advice, actually, in terms of use of BPMN, Sheldon. So you've naturally drifted
Just flowed into it.
the right topic, because I think we've covered the challenges, of course, but some of those practical guidelines that people can utilize, especially those that are using BPMN for the first time. I think it's important to share.
Right. Can I tell? Do we have time for a short story? I could tell you a short story about one of my experiences introducing BPMN to a small audience. So, okay, the models I was talking about before, they're like like this, right? So I wanted to show the power of BPMN in terms of like streamlining your thinking and controlling your focus and making sure that you're thinking these things through. And exacto. And so I remember I took one of those models home one night and I tried to convert to BPMN, and like I didn't know anything about this. I was fresh into the company. I didn't know anything about this big process. And so I looked at it and I tried to, reverse engineer it. And so I put it together in BPMN. That's like a fun creative exercise for me. So, okay, let's run at it. And then I started asking questions like, well, hold on, man. Wait, how does this get to happen here? Like, isn't there doesn't there need to be a check in here? Or is there an input? Where's the input for this? How do they process that? Like, and then that's everything too, the descriptions, like dealing with how you name your activities, how you name your processes, the naming conventions themselves, extremely important for scoping and understanding depth of detail and where you're at, right? So, and also prevent yourself from freaking other people out, because if you're using lengthy descriptions, it just gets crazy. And if you're using words like manage this, manage that, it depends who your audience is. High level manages makes sense, but once you get to layer 2, layer 3, it's no longer using words like manage. It's it's calculate this, operate that, whatever the deal is. Adverb, verb kind of nomenclature, right? So
that's it. I mean, that's really important, isn't it? So that people can look at the process, and as well as understand the boxes, you don't want to counteract the understanding that the BPMN models give you by then being overly verbose or unclear with your language. So using that verb noun, as you say, or vice versa, just forces things to be a bit more concise and prompt and focused.
The advice for utilizing it for first time, like I say, is it's really about know who your people are you're working with, understand their level of capability in modeling stuff. Some people don't have to do models, work in environments where they just write text for everything, and it's just like there's no diagrams. So it's just like, what's going on here? Like, how do you guys operate, right? So I mean, the power of the page, the power of the picture, so start the really, really real basic level. And this is why it's powerful, because we have, and you can explain, and what I do is I say, we're dealing with a diverse set of stakeholders here. We all have our own language and lingos and ways of operating and styles and flows. But when it comes to looking out the window and seeing a scene, we can all agree that's a flower, that's a hill, that's a cloud in the sky, right? I mean, some of us might see pictures in the clouds and whatnot, but so you start from there, and you can really lead them into feeling it as well. And so if you're an expert modeler, you don't want to come into a new place and just hammer them with gateways and you don't want to be doing that.
Exactly, totally agree, Sheldon. Like you mentioned, we have based regarding or depending on the user of our processes, we will use different level of details. Like we usually mention, we have the descriptive process, the analytical process, and then we have the executable process. And when and those different levels require different level also of details. Because when we reach the executable part, so the BPMN model have to be, we have to deep into the detail about, because it's already the execution part. So totally agree. So based on the, let's say, on the customer or the client of our process, we have to show them different
levels.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think
bring them with you over to.
Sorry. Which relates to what you're saying, really, is for a lot of people using BPMN for the first time, they may be in an organisation that isn't using it for the first time. So have a look around in your organisation, see if actually there are already process standards, because if there are, they're probably going to be using BPMN in some form, or there'll be
Hopefully.
others who used it at least extensively, so you can leverage what they've done. I think that would be a tip that I can add on to what you both said for users that are new to BPMN anyway. And then, of course, probably a very fundamental thing I feel that makes me think as we're talking is that for anyone new to BPMN, don't forget that actually the more fundamental thing that you need to get better at is actually interacting with your stakeholders, trying to elicit information from them. You know, this is the icing on the cake, which we're talking about, is the ability to draw it in a slightly better way. But it still relies on your skills as a BA to understand what the users are doing, what is important, where that value stream is, etc.
Yes, and one of the pitfalls that I come across when I didn't finish my story before about that. That's okay, but I'll wrap it up real quick, little Bo. So I bring my model into work the next day. I show the folks, they're sitting slightly behind me. I'm walking them through the thing, right? And I'm showing them the process. I'm saying, now, what about this? What about that? And I'm saying, like, these are the questions that this model gets me to ask. And as I turn around, I look back, and I see them both looking at each other, going, "What the fuck is he talking?" And then I realized, whoa, I must have missed the mark somewhere. Like, they don't understand the impact and the power. So these were seniors, but they were actually juniors, if you know what I'm saying. And that's the other thing too. So the ignorance in some folks can be quite atrocious. And so how do you mitigate dealing with those uncomfortable moments is maybe starting out with an intro of some sort and why and what your goal is, which is something that I maybe could have brushed up a little bit better on in that experience. So, looking back to 2020,
definitely makes me think of some scenarios where I've seen in the past, people being presented or stakeholders being presented with process models, and rather than taking them layer by layer, they've similarly been presented with this big wall of process flows, and it's like, where do I start? I'm not going to be able to see it, then and read it. If you guide them through, all the better. It's just manage their exposure to it so that they're not scared off before they even start.
Right, you got it. Name it. We covered it. Like, understand your audience. Simplicity's first, right? Leveling it. Naming conventions. We touched on that. Right. Building that awareness, knowledge, the reason why it's good. The reusability factor. Maybe you could sell executives on the reusability factor, or at least project leaders. This can be an operational information at the end of the day. That's why it's important to do it now, right? In most projects, they're just trying to cram stuff in and then they want to react later, right? So it's up to us to sort of be the proactive person that says, hey, like,
it's good.
Yeah.
Gerard, any points from you to add on in terms of practical advice?
I would say that it's maybe, it depends on the role you have. And I would say that the easiest way for me, at least, to learn or to really get, the BPMN, it's really to go from existing thing or maybe to simple thing to try to understand, because trying to go from scratch can be difficult, because what I just realized is like, I was working with maybe a quick history about that. I was working with, so I was showing my BPMN processes, and they say, I kind of understand what it's doing. But then when they try to design the process, they realize that it's not that easy.
Wait a minute.
It's not okay. How I'm supposed to do this? How I'm supposed to model this? So I think that maybe the easiest way is really to go from existing processes and try to understand that. So that mental process to understand what's going on, and maybe you can learn it faster.
Yeah, that's a good lesson there in terms of what's wider than BPM as well. I think just understanding that current state before you go too far and trying to map the future can get everyone on the same page. And if we talk about BPMN in that context, if you're asking someone to model what they know already or what's happened already, they'll find it less daunting if you're trying to say to them, here's a tool you've never seen, here's a model you've never seen. And I've never seen it, so I can't understand it to help you. All those things are gonna make life pretty difficult.
Oh yeah. Or fun if you're that type of person. Maybe that's how you make life fun. Yeah.
Sure, of course. Gerald, I know you've shared a lot of tips as a Sheldon. Is there one top tip that you might want to share if you haven't already in terms of the BPMN making
Hmm.
more impactful?
Yeah, I think that's my main thing. I don't have anything. Yeah, maybe more. Maybe you can come later, but I don't have something specific.
You've
For me,
covered a few things already, so I'm asking that
yeah.
question more out of politeness because I figure you probably already covered it. But there we go. But Sheldon, is there any top tips that you haven't shared already that you might want to?
Yeah, this one I haven't articulated yet, but so I'm gonna reflect back on the four W's: the who, what, when, and the where, not the why, right? So if you think about things through that lens as you're going through the activities and just keep asking yourself this, you will get a good flush on your first go through. The other thing is, one of the things that I come across that I think might help people is when you're dealing with some of these people, like some folks are anal, right? What they consider an activity or a process thing that needs to be modeled in the process, it doesn't need to be modeled in the process necessarily. It could be a part of an input for a data object that is maybe a guide, an SOP for this activity or whatever the case is, all right? So when you're working with folks, like I love to collaborate to do process modeling on the fly at high levels. When it starts getting detailed, I would start with interviewing the SMEs first and capture your information, gather your intelligence, then go back and try to piece it together yourself. Then run by and do your validation check and confirm with your clarification that way, using it as a facilitation tool. When you get to those strong users and strong stakeholders that demand they want stuff done a certain way, and it's going to mess up your masterpiece that's trying to be super clear and concise and cover all the right things, right? At that layer, what you do is you use the power of sub-processes, okay? So when it starts getting a little messy and there's some additional logic in here, and so this is where how I look at stuff is bird's eye view. You've got your main pools, so if it's org level, or if you're talking about government and industry or whatever level you want to take it to, and then when you get into the division or the business unit or interdepartments, now you're getting into another layer and so forth. So when you're getting to a spot where you're modeling something and you have too many actors involved, that's a sub-process. When you're looking at too many activities involved, that's a sub-process. Don't put it in that swim lane. It doesn't belong there. Make it a sub-process. Bang it out. All your friends are going to be happy and you're going to be happy because now you can focus on that subset. And it doesn't matter. It's not just 3 levels deep. I've gone 4 levels deep sometimes, right?
Yeah,
So
and I think that
that's what,
that's a really
that's
really
it.
good tip because it means that firstly people are not don't feel they have to put everything on the model at the same time, and they can just take you through layer by layer, so it becomes less daunting and it
Exactly. Yeah.
avoids that situation, that story you shared a minute ago, Sheldon, the big baller process. It avoids that because you
Bingo. Bingo. It's like,
layer by layer,
yeah.
make it more digestible as well. So yeah, I mean, and I would advocate exactly the same. I think in a related way, I think my top tip would be when it comes to modeling the process, don't necessarily be concerned initially with the level of detail. So what I tend to do is speak to my
Good point.
stakeholders, let them tell me in whichever detail they feel is appropriate of the various steps that they would observe in their process. And what I'll then do is look at what they've told me, and I'll think to myself, have they actually just told me a series of steps that they've actually just are all part of the same activity, the same point in time, it's them doing it, and could we just group that together under a single or a few
Yep.
processes? But I don't want to stifle their creativity. I don't want to stop them in flow. So what I
That's
want to
right.
try and do
That's
is get
right.
them
You
to
want
tell me.
you want to take it all in, right? That's
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 it.
the
Yeah.
It goes
that's
back to what you
right.
said before. Take the process away, have a think about it, bring it back to them,
Boom.
how you've digested it. And it may
Yep.
be that all that detail is relevant, but it's relevant under a sub process that you've
Yeah.
created as
Bingo. Bingo. And you can have a different set of actors in there. So now you're talking about say SRE time. We're talking about some production failure. Now we got to deal with a vendor to get that ticket. Now here you go. You don't need to clutter up your layers. But what I would do is I start with, and I do this with use case modeling too, is you should probably review all the pools and actors before you even start talking about processes with people. Show them like these are all give them a one pager that says these are all the actors involved or pools or organizations, vendors, third parties, systems or people. You can even,
yeah.
modeling systems. Like we said, like you said earlier, John, you can model anything with BPMN. So
That's it.
systems, yeah. If you want to get down to
Possibly
database layers,
people are using like related techniques to be able to get to the point that you've just mentioned there. Because if people that are perhaps thinking about their stakeholder matrix before they start, or their RACI, trying to identify the different individuals who represent different teams is already getting them on that path that you've described. But if they haven't done that, then obviously they can dive straight in the process, but they still need to think about who the actors
Too much
are.
to think about at the same time, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so what we're talking about is structuring the thinking approach, right? Not just as an analyst, but as a consumer of the output or our deliverables, right? So it's great. I mean, if you, that's why I say I could talk about this all day. It's awesome. Like you can
And there's so many related topics. I mean, in the last few, I say not too many recent episodes of BAInsights, we've spoken about uniform process notation, or UPN, unified process notation rather. We've spoken about SIPOC as well, supplier, input, process, output, and consumer, all very related to this topic of BPM. So if anyone's watching this one hasn't looked at those two, particularly the SIPOC one, I would recommend that you do. Anyway,
likewise.
As of course I would recommend you watch all the videos.
Maybe I can add something quickly, something, because it's something that regarding the modeling of the process, it tips is also focus. What is the trigger of the process?
Bingo.
What is the trigger of the process? Because usually,
how does this event occur? Yeah.
Because I realized that during my modeling with stakeholder, we talk a lot about when I say, okay, what is the trigger, and then you realize that each person have different, when we trigger the process, okay, what is the trigger? So
Exactly. And how many inputs, how many different ways can you receive that payment, for example? Oh, so there's an event, finance department gets a notification. Oh, what does that do? Oh, it could trigger multiple things. Trigger what? These events, right? So
exactly.
Love the event-driven mindset.
How this tool is this technique is a really good way to help you as a BA explore those things that you should be exploring, as we said.
Exacto.
I wonder then, we've covered a lot, obviously, about BPMN, what it is, when to use it. There's some of the challenges and tips to overcome. Let's think a little bit broader in terms of the future. So I wondered, Sheldon, how do you see, or if you have an opinion as to how you see BPMN evolving with advancements in AI or process modeling or automation?
Okay, it's a great question, John. Okay, I'm going to say something here. It might be revolutionary. It might not be. But really, what I see is, we would take a process description and model it ourselves. Well, AI is going to be doing the modeling for us. It could be doing reverse modeling as well. It's going to be able to take a photo that we can, a JPEG of our business process modeling that we got, and it can write the process descriptions. And it can also look at the areas for troubleshooting and automation as well. It can analyze all that. But where I really want to dig into is, since we're talking about BPMN and AI, where I see, when I've been thinking about this for a while now, is as is modeling has never become more valuable ever in our careers than right now. And you know why? Because of digital twinning. So what I see the power of BPMN, if you've got a person or you've got a few folks who know how to BPMN stuff, okay, and get down to there, and you've got an idle-based organization where you have a component database system, these are all inputs. What you can do is you can literally digitally twin your organization. BPMN is the driving force for business process reengineering. And not only that, business architecture reengineering. So I'm looking very soon, and I'm expect to see within the next year or two the ability to do this. So focus on your BPMN as an input to let AI explain to you where there are opportunities for improvement, and give it the context so you have your own tenant, the AI tenant setup. Give it the context of all your components. So you got to have a component inventory. You got to have an interface inventory. You got to have these things in place that we can use quantitatively, and with our non-functional requirements qualitatively, of course, to redesign the complete business within bam. So forecasting. So now I got a digital twin. I'm going to hammer on what's the scenario? What happens if I decide I want to alter, I want to lose headcount, I want to drop this, I want to add this, I want to, this is what it's all about, is efficiencies, automations. So I see massive transformation, massive modernization on a scale that is unprecedented within the next couple of years. And the companies who are on top of their shit are going to be doing their as-is analysis like right now and using it as an input to put in. And BPMN, being a global industry standard, is a great place to start, considering so many tools play nicely with BPMN. And I think AI will play very lovely with BPMN. You know,
Okay.
AI is going to be able to communicate stuff to us in BPMN. So that's my take. I hope that wasn't too.
That was perfect. That was as an opinion. We'll watch with. Obviously, we won't come back to you and say you were wrong if that's the way it turns out to be. But it sounds.
Yeah, it feels like it's the way it's going. Yeah.
So far.
Digital twin, everything's being twin, and AI is just gonna forecast this, forecast that, and now you can take the less riskiest path based on TCO or whatever metric OKR you want to run with.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think being able to connect the process to data and to be able to get this insights as you go and inform the paths that you might explore, I think is going to become invaluable. Historically, as BAs, you sort of map the process. Then you go away and figure out the data to prove whether the process was right. And actually, if you can get all the connections correct in the first place through AI or otherwise, then actually you're in a position where you can immediately talk to a stakeholder who's under the impression that your process is going one way if the data is pointing to it going quite a different way. As an example.
Bingo, John. Hit the hammer on the head, bud.
Gerard, we'll leave you with that easy question to end as well in terms of how you see the future of BPMN.
Yes, I will mainly talk about the position, like I mentioned, since I'm coming from a technical background, also on the automation or the orchestration part. I was recently reading a good book about digital transformation, and the author was talking about that innovation nowadays, it's not really about building something revolutionary from scratch. It's really about combining what already exists. It's kind of, so when we talk about, for example, orchestration or process orchestration or BPM and process orchestration, we have different process endpoints. So we have people, we have devices, we have system, we have AI. And then, I mean, nowadays, I think what will be difficult is to be able to be creatively enough to think about combination of those process endpoints. So AI will be a big player. So how we will combine those different process endpoints to propose a solution to our clients.
Yeah, and it feels like BAs are in the perfect place to do that with our natural curiosity and structure and relationships.
Exactly.
And that creativity, I think, as well, that AI can't currently provide, I would say.
One thing I'd say, BPMN case management as an input to case management tools. We could use AI right now to refine our current BPMNs to refine that input to case management. Boom, there's a value add. Boom, like that as a BA.
Yeah.
Right? One example. I could think about lots.
That's probably a great place to stop, Sheldon, actually, on that point.
Next topic, another time. Yeah.
That's it. But thank you, gents, for your time and insight. Really, as expected, an interesting session, really interesting session, actually. About a really important topic for BAs, BPMN and process. So, yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again soon or hearing from you in the wider BA community. But until that time, thanks again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you, John.